Operas, I'm here back for another video of the Return of the God Pharaoh PvE Coalition event. Today we're going to talk about 3.3, the big boss Nicol Bolas himself. If you try to approach this like a normal PvP match, you may be in a lot of trouble. Nicol Bolas is a beast against normal strategies, but if you build intelligently, he can be pretty much of a cakewalk. So Nicol Bolas himself has 532 hit points, crazy mana gains, +6 across the Grixis colors and +4 to each of white and green. And his loyalty ability for 15 loyalty is the last 2 cards of your opponent's hands are exiled, then the last 2 creatures your opponents control on the battlefield are exiled, then your opponent takes 40 damage. If you try to play this where you drop creatures and he keeps activating this loyalty ability, you are going to be dead extremely quickly. You have to build in a way where you will deal 20 or more damage during a single turn and then cast 3 or more spells that cost 12 or more, so you need some expensive spells. Well, how do you go about trying to beat a crazy boss like this? Even if you have a pretty limited collection, you should be able to beat Nicol Bolas in 3.3 pretty easily. The trick to this is his loyalty ability will not be activated if you have no creatures on the board for him to try to exile. So if you can build a creatureless build or a deck that never puts any creatures on the board, really the only thing in his deck that can be a recurring source of damage is Wildfire Eternal, a 4/8 creature, and Imminent Doom, a support that gains shields and deals you damage for the number of shields on the support whenever you cast a spell. Pretty much everything else in the deck are really great ways to deal with any creatures you might put on the board. There are some one-time damage effects like Inferno Jet and Torment of Hailfire, but pretty much everything else steals creatures or destroys or exiles creatures or lets you want to cast more spells. So you can really kind of clog up your opponent's hand with all these things to deal with creatures if you never put creatures on the board. So the approach that we've taken to win with a creatureless manner is to use a Hazoret's Undying Fury and Approach of the Second Sons build. So Approach of the Second Sons is a really cool card, costs 16. It's a spell that costs 16, and Hazoret's Undying Fury costs 21. So those help us meet the cast expensive spells criteria. Approach of the Second Sons for 16, you gain 7 life and your opponent takes 7 damage. Then you gain X life and your opponent takes X damage, where X is the number of copies of this card in your graveyard multiplied by 7. So Approach of the Second Son is kind of like a life drain spell to help keep our life total high, even if we do take a little bit of damage in the beginning of going off here. And the more of them you cast, the more efficiently that it will drain your opponent. And Hazoret's Undying Fury for 21 lets us fetch the first 4 spells that aren't Hazoret's Undying Fury, so the only spell that we have left is Approach of the Second Sons. So the first approach will deal 7, then 14, 21, 28, continuing on and on and on. So it just will ramp up to win you the match pretty quickly. So these are our only 2 spells in the deck in order to facilitate this combo. We have Pyromancer's Goggles to have activate 3 to fetch spells and make them free, so we'll either get Hazoret's Undying Furies or Approach of the Second Sons with that, which is great. Sunforger is a card I like. Some folks don't run this, but we're not worried about it pumping our other creature, but whenever you match this support's gem, you fetch the first red or white spell from your library. It gains full mana. This card really works with stuff that wants to pop gems, because you can also get this if you make a match from it from conversions happening, or a landfall ability triggering this in a row or a column. But we combine this with a bunch of green conversion. So 2 creatures in the deck, since we only have 6 support slots, basically are just there to do conversion to green. And Shafet Monitor, with cycling 6, when you cycle it, you convert 9 gems to green. So this will really help with our gem conversion. We just have one more cycler in the deck, Greater Sandworm. We have it in here because it is a green card with cycling 2. The reason for that is with Karn's first ability, it's slightly more synergistic to have more green cards in the deck that you could exile to that first ability to increase your green mana bonus. And then that way, when you convert green, it will return more mana when you make green matches. And the rest of our cards in our deck are green converters that are supports. So we have at the beginning of your turn, convert 2 gems to green with, and this is Pilgrimage, a card everyone has from the beginning of the game. It's still one of the best converters in the game. It's so efficient. Hinterland Harbor for 7 is effectively a convert 2 gems to green. Technically, you might not have 5 or more green gems on the board, in which case it would convert to blue, but with all our other green converters, it normally does that. Memorial to Unity is convert 2 for 8 green, and then if it dies, it would fetch a creature from our library. Technically, I guess that could get us a green cycler that we could cycle away for something else, maybe convert more. And then Orin Reef, the Vastwood. This is great because for 9 mana, it converts 3. And actually, there are new cards that I think would actually be more efficient than the green Memorial. So let's go ahead and find it. The cycle of the Threshold lands should be able to make us have a more efficient converter, because it is also for 9 mana, I believe, convert 3 gems to green. So let's see. Oh, it's not a green card, it's a colorless card. So convert green. Let's see. It's what's it called? Centaur Grove, something like that. Yes, Centaur Garden. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we're gonna run that instead. It's 1 more mana, but it will lose 2 life. Not too worried about that. But then convert 3 gems to green. So we're gonna make a little on-the-fly upgrade to this deck. That old version of the deck is one that I've had going for a long time. You definitely can build more efficient versions of the deck. ZW 2007. Demonius, some other members of the FTA chat have better, more efficient versions using masterpieces like Sanguine Bond, other things that can really make it go faster. But this is just a build I had saved, and it's the first upgrade I've made to it for quite a while, actually. But it's a pretty efficient deck. So basically all we want to do is just stay alive and then ramp into Hazoret's Undying Furies or ways to get those onto the board to beat our opponent. And we should actually be able to win in pretty short order. But if you don't have, some of these older, rare, mythic masterpiece cards like Approach and Hazoret's Undying Fury, you can absolutely win in other creatureless ways. Cycling with Faith of the Devoted, kind of like I used for 2/3, something like that could absolutely work. Maybe something like with Obnixilis, so you can get additional drains from his ultimate loyalty ability. You can even just do burn. It would take a while, but if you're a new player and just have burn with Chandra, you could absolutely win that sort of way. You may want a little bit of ways to deal with an enchantment if you're not going too fast to deal with their potential imminent doom, and just a way to deal with creatures, which burn or destroy effects could do. But yeah, just if you build intelligently, almost anyone should be able to beat Nicol Bolas Godpharaoh. So yeah, so we have our little Karn conversion here, and we're gonna go for it. Let's see how fast we can win this match. Again, if you do have Sanguine Bond or some of the other slightly more efficient builds, you absolutely could win a little bit faster, but this deck will still win pretty quickly. I like to do things that I know and are consistent, and I think that's important. Make sure you're comfortable and know how to play a deck. If you're just pulling a deck list, make sure you know. I like to run it through training grounds at least several times, usually to get a feel for the deck, because sometimes there's weird little tricks and tips to playing it. Hopefully these videos can be helpful to folks as well, just to see how something operates and talk through what happens. So again, we don't want to play HUF Monitor, because if our opponent has something to target and we have our cards exiled from our hand, lose 40 life, we're going to die pretty quickly. But let's get a Centaur Garden down if we can, and then we'll start going to town here. So let's see, we could get a black match and a green match, which would also give us a loyalty match. That seems pretty good. I think that's going to be our most efficient thing that we can do here. All right. Great. So I think I'm going to get our 2 converters on the board here, and then we can have HUF Monitor out and be in pretty good shape. Actually, let's just cycle. I want to get the green converters out first, I think, because then I'm more likely with HUF Monitor to be able to, when I cycle it, get into more things. We only have like 6 green gems out, so I don't think it's quite going to be efficient enough yet. And I can get just enough mana to actually get both Centaur Garden and this is Pilgrimage on the board. Then I'm going to be converting 6 to green every turn, which is great. So let's see, I can get white and loyalty matches, which is pretty good. I can get black matches. What else can I get? I think loyalty and white matches are gonna be what I want the most here. Great, got another black match out of it too. That's wonderful. So again, I am taking a little damage off of that Centaur Garden here, but I think it's worth it in the long run. Great, so I've got an Oran Reef the Vastwood, which is going to be another converter. So let's go ahead and use Karn's ability. Karn is doing something a bit funny with when you're fetching and have cycling cards in your deck. I think I have a theory about what it's doing. We want to get a Pyromancer's Goggles, because we can try to cast that and then start with all our conversions, try to pop these activated gems. But I think what it's doing is when you go to fetch a card that if there's other cards left that you don't fetch that are exiled that have cycling, I think it's actually activating the cycling. So it can drain some mana from your hand and draw you extra cards. It's a little bizarre. So I think, again, we're going to go a little long term here. We are going to HUF Monitor cycle to try to get this Oran Reef the Vastwood on the board, so then we'll convert 8 a turn and then get to cast our Pyromancer's Goggles in pretty short order, I hope. So here we're converting. Oh, that's a great conversion. That's wonderful. Great, and now we have enough mana to play the Oran Reef the Vastwood, and then hopefully soon get Pyromancer on the board, and we've got Approach Second Suns to start regaining some life as needed too, which is great. So let's see, we've got a green match, which we get equal mana for everything, so we might actually want to match one of the Grixis color ones to take it away from our opponent. So what we could do is get a blue match 3 or match 4 into a green match 3, which is pretty nice. I think that's what we're going to do, double checking that there's not anything better on the board. There's a blue match we can make, a loyalty match we can make, but I think this is going to be the most efficient thing that we can do here. We got the black match as the cascaded down too, which is nice. All right, and look at that, with all that conversion, now we have an Approach of the Second Suns, which we're going to get to do soon. We'll get Hinterland Harbor out as additional conversion, and then hopefully next turn just be able to pop that Pyromancer's Goggles to get out some approaches, and then HUFs. All right, go ahead and activate this ability. Great, so I'm going to experiment here. So normally I would want to get HUF Monitor, but I think what I'm going to do to experiment and test my theory is if I grab the Centaur Garden, theoretically I think it's going to cycle both the Sandworm and the HUF Monitor to have us draw cards, and maybe it'll even do the conversion off the HUF Monitor. So let's see if that's how this is strangely functioning right now. Again, if that wasn't the case, getting the HUF Monitor would be the right sort of choice here, but let's take a look. Yeah, it did some cycles, yep, and it even activated the cycling ability. That's pretty cool. So it's a weird thing, so it's a little obnoxious because actually normally I want to get my mana gains out first, but knowing that that's how that operates, that is good knowledge to have. So let's see. I think what I want to do here is we want to get our Pyromancer's Goggles out, then our Hinterland Harbor, and then I want to get Sunforger on the board as another way to potentially pop some stuff. We're in no danger life total wise, so I don't feel like I need to do the Approach of the Second Suns yet, but now, and then after we have our Pyromancer's Goggles and get our Activate 3 up, we should be in very good shape to hopefully start draining our opponent's life total out in a hurry. All right. So let's see. Got 3 mana bonus to everything. So let's see. We could get a... What do? We could get a black match. We could get a green match. I think it's probably best to just take the black match from the opponent so they don't have mana to do something crazy. Yeah, I don't see it. Well, I guess we can get a loyalty into a black match. That's probably the best, so let's do that for now. Okay, so they've got their creature on the board. Got a lot of conversion going on, which is awesome. And let's see, we don't have anything that we're going to pop immediately, I don't think. But let's see what we can do. So I'm going to activate Karn's ability. Again, we're going to do the weird thing where I grab something and then it should cycle the Sandworm away. Yeah, that's really bizarre how that's doing that. But okay, cool. So we've got some approaches to start casting, and let's see. We're pretty good on... I'm going to keep our Centaur Garden charged so we have something that we can cycle away if we need mana to cycle stuff away. So white is slightly more efficient. We can get a white match 4, which is pretty cool. We could also get a white 3 into loyalty, or we could get a loyalty into red, potentially into blue as well. I might do that just to take some mana away from our opponent right now. I don't think there's a way that I can activate any of these gems that our opponent has at the moment. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Great, we've gone back to full life. Our opponent will be starting to hit us with this creature that he has. Okay, so that is interesting. So when it deals damage to a planeswalker, the first spell in your opponent's hand gains full mana. It already had cards in the top of his hand already had full mana, so those are fully charged cards, which are probably removal he's trying to use that is completely dead against us, which is pretty cool. So, all right. We should hopefully be able to start going off here. So we have our Hazoret's Undying Fury. So let's go ahead and try to find a top card that we have. We're going to grab another Hazoret's Undying Fury and then be able to cycle our Shafet Monitor. I think, though, I maybe should have cleared a card from hand, because maybe Shafet Monitor... Well, no, I think it's still going to do its weird thing where it's going to still give us mana, but the Hazardous Undying Fury will still go to hand. Let's see. Yep, so it did do conversions. Great. Oh, wow, we got a lot of mana now. That's great. And so let's see. Let's get rid of some stuff in our hand, and we can start to go off here, I think. So we are going to cast Approach of the Second Suns, and then we'll have Hazardous Undying Fury ready. Ready to cast here. All right. So let's see. We can get some green mana, some white mana. I don't think it matters too much what we're actually going to be doing here, because our opponent's going to be dead pretty soon. So let's just go ahead and take some black mana from the opponent, and we'll just start to go off here. So we're draining. Now we'll do Hazardous Undying Fury, get 4 copies of our Approach of the Second Sun. And we'll just keep dealing more and more damage to our opponent. Within a couple turns, hopefully, we should have our opponent dead. Let's see, what turn of the game is this? Something like turn 8 or something like that? Oh, wonderful. And this is why I just personally like all this conversion in a deck. We just went and we got, 30-some mana here off of all these. It's just my comfort zone. I like conversion-based decks, and since I had all these support slots, I just like to fill in the things that are not fetching our win conditions to convert into finding and being able to cast more win conditions. So let's see. We are turn 7. So yeah. So I'm not sure if we're going to win this turn, but if not, we should be pretty close. So let's see. Let's go ahead and activate our fetch ability. I think we're okay on converters, so I'm just gonna, doesn't really matter too much actually, but I'll grab, I think, Sunforger. Let's see where our Sunforger is actually, because that's what I should be looking for, is if I can match this gem, then I get an extra copy of something as well. So let's see. I could get a black here for Pyromancer's Goggles, which is pretty good. So I think that's what I'm going to do here. So that'll give us a copy at no cost, I believe. We're going to cast Hazardous Undying Fury. And normally Hazardous Undying Fury drains mana from the other cards, but since the one that we got off of the Pyromancer's Goggles is free, we're going to save that for next turn if we don't win this turn. So that's great. So we're just ready next turn, and next turn I think that should be enough life drain to kill our opponent. Yeah, because they're down to 70. The next hit from that should let us win on turn 8, which is great. So turn 8 win. Again, you can go a bit faster if you use some of the other masterpieces and other things I mentioned, but this version works pretty well too. All right. So yeah, turn 8. We're going to take out our opponent, and as you've seen, we're obviously dealing more than 20 damage in a single turn, and with our spells that we're getting off of Hazardous Undying Fury, we've been able to cast a lot of really expensive spells too. So we'll just take a match and take our win against Big Bad Nicol Bolas on node 3.3. Alright, don't need to cast that because our next one of these should just kill the opponent. Great, hope you enjoyed this video, And again, just the reminder that in player versus environment events, it's just so crucial to build with the known information about what your opponent's deck list is and loyalty abilities are, so you can build to exploit their weaknesses and make your matches much, much easier. All right, take care, everyone.